I want to ask you something, and I want you to actually sit with it for a second. When was the last time someone apologized to you? Really apologized, sat down, looked at you, and said, "I got that wrong, and I'm sorry," and you believe them? Actually, think about it. Now, when was the last time you did that for your kid? Bet the second answer came faster, bet it was recent, maybe even today. That gap between how rarely you received it and how naturally you give it, that's what this video is about. It's one of the most psychologically loaded spaces in your entire life. And most people in your generation are living inside it without ever stopping to ask what it costs them. Let me tell you what your kid doesn't know. When you apologize to them, they receive it as something ordinary. Not ordinary as in unimportant, their nervous system is doing something profound with it, but ordinary as in expected, normal. Of course you came back. Of course you said sorry. Of course the rupture got repaired. They have no frame of reference for the alternative. You do. You know what the alternative looks like. You grew up inside it. The door that stayed closed after, the dinner table that resumed as if the argument never happened, everyone suddenly very interested in their food. The morning after, when everything was just fine. Nobody said anything, nobody came back, and you were supposed to move on, and eventually you got very good at that. So good, in fact, that it started to feel like a personality trait. Here's what was actually happening. Ed Tronick at the University of Massachusetts has spent decades studying what he calls the rupture-repair cycle, what happens in a child's brain when a relationship breaks and gets mended, versus when it breaks and just stays that way. His finding is blunt. Repair isn't optional. It's neurologically formative. A child whose ruptures get repaired learns, at the level of the nervous system, that distress ends, that connection survives, that safety comes back. A child whose ruptures don't get repaired learns something else. You know what they learn, you learned it, you just never had a name for it until now. There's no clinical term for this, but call them orphaned apologies. The repairs that were owed to you and never came. They didn't expire, they didn't dissolve quietly in your 20s. They accumulated, and they've been sitting in you, patient, quiet, waiting, ever since. Here's the part that's hardest to feel. When you apologize to your child, when you come back, get down to their level, say the words, something happens that isn't only about them. Daniel Siegel at UCLA has done extensive work on co-regulation, the way a parent's nervous system and a child's nervous system synchronize during emotional repair. The apology doesn't just land in your child's mind. It lands in their body. Their stress response settles. Their sense of safety recalibrates. But here's what co-regulation research suggests. Your nervous system is in that moment too, and your nervous system has memory. So while your child is receiving the repair, while their brain files away someone came back, I am safe, this relationship held, you're also present, recognizing what's happening, feeling it before you can even name it. Because something in you has been waiting for exactly this, not for you to give it, but for someone to give it to you. Two people, one exchange, two completely different experiences of the same moment. Your child is learning that repairs happen. You're living proof that they can by being the one who makes them. That is what I mean by the retroactive grief loop. The response is physiological. The loop is just the most honest name I have for it. Your body is present in that apology in a way your mind can barely track. And the weight you feel afterward, that thing you can't name that sits in the chest after you've done everything right, that's the loop closing. Grief and repair happening in the same breath. Now the part nobody wants to sit with. The grief, the retroactive grief loop stirs up, doesn't have a clean place to land. And that's not an accident. It's the specific shape of this loss. You're not angry at your kid. You're not angry at yourself. You might feel something close to anger when you think about your parents, but even that doesn't hold its shape for long. Because here's the truth, most people in their late 30s and 40s eventually arrive at, usually alone, usually late at night. Your parents couldn't give you what they never received. Not as an excuse. As a fact, the boomers in their parenting prime were raised by people who'd survived real deprivation. The silent generation passed down one non-negotiable value. You get on with things. You don't dwell. You don't name it. You don't make it someone else's problem. Your parents absorbed that completely and then raised you inside it with love that was real and with an emotional vocabulary that had a hole in it where repair should have been. Paul Gilbert at the University of Derby found something that explains why this particular loss is so hard to process. Grief towards someone who hurt you without intending to is almost impossible to resolve. There's nothing to confront, no wound that was chosen, no one to hold accountable, just an absence, passed down quietly across generations. There's no single term in the literature for it, but the experience is well documented. Let's call it unaddressable loss. The grief with nowhere clean to go because it has no culprit. It just sits there, complex, without language. Until now. I want to ask you something different now. Who are you supposed to be? Not career, not relationships, something quieter and more structural than any of that. The version of you that grew up knowing in their bones that when something breaks, it can be fixed, that needing something from someone doesn't put the relationship at risk, that you can say that hurt me without bracing for what comes after. That version of you didn't fully form, not because of anything wrong with you, because the raw material, consistent, repeated, embodied experiences of being repaired wasn't reliably there. You feel this. You've always felt it, even without words for it. In how hard it is to tell someone you love that they hurt you. In how fast you move to smooth over conflict before it's finished happening. In the way vulnerability still carries a faint background hum of danger. Even in relationships where you're genuinely safe. That's not a personality quirk. That's what grows in the space where orphaned apologies live. And here's what I want you to actually hear. None of that is permanent. The fact that you're here, watching this, trying to understand what's happening inside you, that's already the thing changing it. Awareness is not nothing. It's where everything starts. Let's go back to the moment after your apology. Your child has settled. The rupture got repaired. The ordinary afternoon resumed, and you're standing there. In the kitchen, in the hallway, on the edge of their bed, feeling something you still can't name. Proud, maybe, a little hollowed out, strangely moved by something that was, on the surface, just a regular parenting moment. Here's what was actually happening. Every time you go back, every time you stay in the room instead of waiting for it to blow over, every time you say, "I'm sorry, I got that wrong," you're doing two things at once. You're giving your child something formative, something their nervous system will carry long after they've forgotten the specific afternoon it happened on. And you're also sending something backward to the child you were, not symbolically, physiologically. Your nervous system, present in that moment, is receiving a message it has been waiting a long time for. Repair was always supposed to come. The silence after a rupture was never meant to be permanent. Needing something from someone was never supposed to cost you the relationship. You're the first person in your family's line to send that message, not in a grand gesture, in the middle of a Tuesday. In 4 minutes, your child won't consciously remember, and their nervous system will never forget. That is what changing something looks like. Quiet, specific, unremarkable from the outside. The wait in the silence after, that thing that moved through you and wouldn't let you name it, it has a name now. It's called the retroactive grief loop. And you've been living inside it every time you showed up, the way nobody showed up for you. That's not a small thing. That's everything.